Alright, guys, so today I'm going to be reacting to Piers Morgan rejecting the great Ormond organization for their focus on advising to use gender neutral language. Gender neutral language is language for those who want to be more informed about it. Is just words and phrases that may connote gendered connotations, regardless of the goodwill of the speaker. It is mainly advocated by feminists who want to reduce the androcentric bias in our language, such as male man, garbage man, and fireman. But with gender neutral language still in development, there are more and more words people are using as alternative, such as they, them, for every person they meet. Although it is a small fraction of the population, as many people naturally gender people based on how they look with a simple he or she and wait for people to state their pronouns as a request, but not as a everyday etiquette. Now, in some places, in very progressive spaces such as California or in Oregon, it has become a standard to state your pronouns while meeting people, to normalize alternative gender identities besides the male-female binary that society has constructed.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Join me now as my pack Talk TV contributor and lawyer Paula Adrian, Talk TV presenter Richard Tice, and international editor, such a wonderfully fancy title, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome to all of you. You can see you've all missed me, even if your eyes and expressions are telling a different
Story for those who didn't make out the last word.
Ormond Street, where I had a cousin who was a consultant neurologist there for kids for many years and brilliant. But in the middle of all this, you read a story, the advice for staff at Great Ormond Street Hospital urges them to stop using gendered language in conversation, suggests the wrong pronouns can make people feel disrespected, invalidated, dismissed, triggered, alienated, or often all of these things. And they've stopped people to use words like boy or girl or man or woman. And I'm sorry, Richard, how are they finding the time?
Exactly.
Right,
this is the point.
to do this stuff. But secondly, where are the rights, I'm going to say this again, where are the rights of people like me who would like to be called a man? Or Isabel, who I suspect would like to be called a woman when she goes to a hospital? Or a boy or a girl? Where are the rights of the vast majority of people?
I don't think there should be rights for someone to refer to you by a gendered word, as genderless language is meant to be gender inclusive, but I do understand where Morgan is coming from, since using gender neutral language feels as if people are degendering someone, which means to strip gender away from someone.
The resource that's wasted
And the
on producing
bowing
all this
is about
guidance
this
and this
woke
nonsense.
mentality that everything has to now be inclusive, even if in the process it excludes the majority of people from what they want.
Good point, though. Gender neutral language is still improving, but I think we should just get over it, since it only reinforces a system that privileges cisgender people. Piers Morgan, indirectly, whether he is aware of this concept or not, it is called the paradox of inclusion. The paradox of inclusion is the phenomenon where trying to include all people ruins the point of making a group meaningful, as a group is meant to be exclusive, and at the same time it makes the meaning of being part of a special club valueless, as a group does not feel special but feels like being in an idealistic world where we can be nice and there is no suffering. As to whether we should or not use gender neutral language is not known, since what is considered to be offensive is subjective, but I suggest people avoid commonly agreed upon gendered words, while also continuing to make up words to best forward inclusion. For example, when speaking about vasectomy, say people who produce sperm, people who can produce sperm, or sperm provider, to avoid offending people, and continue to look for offensive words or potentially offensive words that even may not have gendered connotations to it, like saying, hey guys, even though guys is gender neutral, but someone out there is offended by it, as it may reinforce the idea as male being the default gender.
Absolute claptrap. Paula, I'm coming to you last because I know what's going to happen. You're going to launch a spirited, ludicrous defence.
And I'm going to be right, and you're all going to agree
Go on,
with me
then.
because you know I'm right. This, and I am disappointed in you all, is actually a good news story.
Why?
It's a good news story
Why?
because it's people being respectful to people.
Really?
And you say, what about the rights of
Yes.
you, Piers, to be called a man? Who said you weren't going to be called
If I
a
go
man?
to Great Ormond Street, they won't call me a man.
Well, as I understand it, the guidelines are that you will be asked how you prefer to be referenced as. You will then explain how you prefer
how
to be
can we
referenced.
be with
and then
all-
you will be referenced.
But when
in the
there's
way.
a war-
Aren't you happy with that, Piers?
Can you imagine
Are
going
you
to
happy?
Can you imagine going to Ukraine right now and saying to those people, Do you feel disrespected, invalidated, dismissed, triggered, alienated, or all of those things by the wrong pronoun?
Why did
Do you think we've lost our perspective on reality of what it feels like to actually be oppressed? It's not about being called the wrong pronoun. It's about being bombed by Russian barbarians. That is oppression. This is nonsense.
I think that's a poor argument because we're not equating the NHS.
I just did.
We're not
I just
equating
did.
what the NHS are attempting to do to make certain people feel better with
Look,
with
their
horror.
job is not making
with the
people feel
horror
better
that
in
is
that
going
This whole
on in
pronoun
Ukraine.
thing is utterly
It is
ridiculous.
absurd.
Because the truth is,
For you,
the truth is, if I
for you
decide,
and for
if
who
I
else?
decide, it's a bit like the number of letters now on the LGBTQ. Do you know the rest of it?
What are
now?
they all?
2
Q,
plus
Y, A plus,
something,
whatever.
something. Right? Nobody knows. It's all complete nonsense.
So I understand that there are even members of the LGBTQ
Who don't know
plus,
themselves.
Community.
You forgot
who,
2 plus.
She made a good point about being respectful to people, treating everyone in a gender-neutral fashion to avoid offense. The little things matter because they shape the way we think about reality. If we stop saying mom and dad and replace it with parents, there's less emphasis on gendered language, which makes people think less about the gender binary.
It's not a
Suggest that we don't
coincidence.
need to do
the
that.
quality of the service and outcomes of the NHS are declining
Because there
by
are
the
people-
month because they're wasting time.
There
on
are
our
people
cat
at Great Ormond.
on this nonsense.
People at Great Ormond Street who are having to come
You
up.
know that's
having to
nonsense.
come up
It's
with
We
this
are
not
kind
not
of
struggling.
nonsense.
Our NHS is not struggling because there are people out there
It
who
is the focusing
care
on the
about
wrong
how
thing.
you
I
reference.
want
Our
Great
NHS
Ormond
is
Street staff
struggling.
to do what they've always done so brilliantly and become world leaders in, which is take care of sick kids. I don't want them worrying or fretting
tell
about
Rishi
whether
Sunak
somebody is a
to
they
look
them.
after-
She made a good point about being respectful to people, treating everyone in a gender-neutral fashion to avoid offense. The little things matter because they shape the way we think about reality. If we stop saying mom and dad and replace it with parents, there's less emphasis on gendered language, which makes people think less about the gender binary. I don't know anything about the quality of the NHS, which stands for National Health Service. Being offensive makes sickness hurts more, so it is better to try to not offend the sick with language. Being offensive ruins people's mental health. To not worry about it hurts people. Inclusion is key to communication.